Our goody two-shoes feel like a cunt group picture out in front of the castle, which was initiated last seminar by the London Reelers, as I say. And in that particular case, Brian Rose took our picture. And this time, my techie staff took our picture. Any questions on anything that we've covered so far? Now, I wanted to make sure that I got this on YouTube, and it's Andrew Carnegie's Rules for Super Success. And you've heard me talk about the little guy for many, many times in the last 4.5 days, and that he's just from down the road in Dunfermline. I don't know if I'm pointing the right way. We're Dunfermline. And not arguably, but the greatest entrepreneur of all time, created in today's dollars probably about $500 trillion, more or less, plus or minus a few bob. And he left Scotland when he was, depending on the story you want to listen to, between 8 and 12. And he changed history. And then he hired Napoleon Hill to write the definitive step-by-step book on success, which Napoleon Hill took 20 years to do, by introducing him to the 500 richest guys in the world that were his buddies. Now, you got to remember, this was written more than 100 years ago. And it's so spot on, it's hard to believe that anybody thought this way 100 years ago. But when you think about it, he's the greatest entrepreneur of all fucking time since the earth began. He had to be a man ahead of his time. And Jeff, what is the number one on Mr. Carnegie's list?
Financial motive must prevail.
Financial motive must prevail. Not just for the owner of the business, but for the employees. For everybody. So there's got to be skin in the game for everybody. I.e., QLA, making people options, giving out equity, etc., having people as part of the solution through ownership. Now, Bill Gates, Schultz of Starbucks, and many, many, many others, you've seen a lot of slides in the last 4.5 days, all say the same thing. Yet, the wee Scot knew this more than 100 years ago. And it hasn't changed. Notwithstanding we're in the 21st century, notwithstanding that you've been taught to be politically correct, and virtually everybody, not everybody, but most everybody on the planet is now, that's less than 30, 40 years old, has been taught that political correctness is important, and you should follow that mantra. The second rule for super success, according to Andrew Carnegie: never reprimand employees, instead ask them questions revealing their own faults. This is very, very, very human resource oriented. It's also called management by objectives, and another more current terminology. It's also smart as shit, and because you bring them into being part of the solution instead of part of the problem, because you're asking them questions, them revealing their own mishaps, their own foibles, their own tendencies to err. Again, super smart for 100, well, super smart today, forget 100 years ago. Number 3, have one or more training for your job. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. Not for me, because I understand this. I always had 3 to 5 people that wanted my job. I always wanted at least 3 and as many as 5. Some of which were willing to cut my heart out to get my job. One of which ultimately cut my head off to get my job many years ago. But I wanted people that wanted my job. I want competition, not just for the lower level or middle management or senior management, but my job. And too many organizations, especially one-man shows like some of us know they're currently working with, never want somebody to take their job. No matter how miserable a manager they are, no matter how shitty their leadership skills are, they're there like a king potentate or a pharaoh or Saddam Hussein. They're there forever. Now, we all know what happened to all those people I just described. Ultimately, they were overthrown. But you want to build an organization skillfully that there are people to take your job, and you want somebody that's willing to step up and take your job. Number 4, and last but not least, never make decisions for employees. Allow them to make their own and give them the responsibility and authority to implement their own actions. Again, this is management by objectives. Management by objectives is you ask the street, the guy that cleans the boardrooms, all the way up to the board level for suggestions, and you make the plan a part of what their suggestions are. Therefore, it's much easier for them to follow the plan if they were part of putting it together. And it's much more difficult for them to not adhere to the plan if they were part of it. Now, these are incredibly insightful. And today's, now this reduces, encapsulates what should be taught at the business schools now, but isn't. Okay? And when you think about how long ago it was written, and you think about who wrote it, not just in Dan Peña's judgment, the greatest entrepreneur of all time, he impacted the world with his thought process, and towards the end of his life, when he was running out of runway, he impacted the world vis-a-vis his philanthropy and the money he gave away. Now, making his money, I'm not here to bash Andrew Carnegie. He was a tough bastard. But again, as I opened up this morning, why do I use rough language? Why do I talk the way I do? Why do I use the metaphors? Why? Because, guys, that's the way it is. And, you've already been hurt, damaged, fucked over. I don't want you to be hurt, damaged, and fucked over anymore, so I want you to be aware of how it really is. Now, some of you, as I've said, and as Brian QLA Rose said, this isn't for everybody. QLA is not for everybody. But if you want to have a go, as they say in Britain, and you want to attempt to be all you can be, then you got to toughen up. You got to toughen up your hide. And if you can't personally toughen up, you have to make sure that you surround yourself with your dream team with people that have calluses, scar tissue, that have been through the gauntlet. That gauntlet that we talked about before, fear, relatives, your own guilt. But this is remarkable that Mr. Carnegie was able to think this clearly. But then again, when you study his history and you study all the absolutely incredible things that he did, genius-like things, and I don't like to give the Scots too much credit because I live here, but it was incredible. And the English don't talk much about him, but the rest of the world does talk about him. And to think he was only down, 30, 40 miles down the road in Dunfermline, it's quite remarkable. Any questions about these 4 rules for super success according to Andrew Carnegie? It's pretty straightforward. The most straightforward thing for you to get is number 1. It's at the top of the list. And I didn't rearrange these just to conform to my own thinking. This is how he wrote them. Financial motive must prevail, but not just for you guys that are starting businesses or are going to expand your businesses, but for your employees. Because when they have skin in the game, when they're part of the solution, they work much more effectively. They're much more cost conscious, etc. Any questions on this? Okay. Now, when we were out taking our picture, 22 of you plus myself, 23. And I don't know if this is going to be how we do it going forward. Other than we froze to death waiting for Bert, and we froze to death with one of our other fellow brothers in arms here. I guess it's a nice gesture. I mean, I'm not going to get all soppy and teary-eyed about it, but it will be posted on social media, Twitter, today, tomorrow? Today. So you'll be able to get it. And the picture, 22 people, is not the biggest group that we've ever had here, but in those days we didn't used to give the seminar at the castle. We used to give the seminar at a local big estate here, and then, but we've had a few more. But vis-a-vis staying at the castle, it's the biggest group we've had ever. So it's interesting, the interfacing of information. Now, on a less happy note, which is very important, and some of you have already alluded to this, when you get rid of people, that means when you have to fire them, when you have to exit them, or the new politically correct terminology, manage them out. Now, I had never heard that before. I didn't know what that meant. But I didn't know what shout-out meant. And I also had only recently found out what, he did me a solid. I don't know what the fuck that meant either. But when you manage people out, getting rid of somebody, when you get rid of someone, never, ever, ever give them a hook with which to get back in. Always make a clean and definable break. And when you're going to get rid of somebody, guys, you do it on a Friday afternoon. You have their check. You have their exit papers. You take well, they don't have this anymore. You take the keys to the executive bathroom away from them. You take the keys to their car away from them. You take their credit cards away from them. And you have security exit them out the goddamn door. You don't sit around and talk about it. And you don't allow them to interface with the other employees. So in other words, you don't tell them it's going to happen in the morning and then you do it in the evening. You do it, if the day ends at 6 o'clock, you bring them in at 15 to 6. And you do all this. You have all the paperwork ready if you have to sign any paperwork. Because the thing that spreads quickest in an organization is bad news, not good news. And most employees will deem somebody getting terminated as bad news, even if they're killing the organization. Another thing I say all the time, and Jack Welch has said this many, many years ago. It's not the people that you fire, terminate, manage out that hurt your business. It's the people that you don't terminate with cause that fuck up your business. It's not the people that you do, it's the people that you don't. Because, most people in an organization know when they should be managed out. Very, very seldom do they come and say, "Oh, Dan, I know I'm not doing the right thing. I know I'm not fulfilling your standards as a manager. I'm not fulfilling your standards as a division head, whatever. I'm not fulfilling your standards as anything." But they won't say that. Very seldom will you find anybody that volunteers to go. Very seldom. And we're talking about some of the unfortunate things about management. And leadership. And with leadership comes responsibilities. With leadership comes not only the good, but the bad, and sometimes the ugly. Okay, YouTubers, bye for now.